So we've talked about the 5-point plan for lameness, and now I just want to give a representation of what benefits that can give you on farm and why we feel that this really works. So just looking at the top graph to start with, this is representing a sort of average level of lameness on farm, and indeed this would be where we were at FAI farms before we started using the 5-point plan. So every flock will have a level of resilience, and that's just indicating that some ewes in the flock will be more likely to suffer from foot disease and some will be less likely to, and you have repeat offenders. So you will have some resilience, but depending on breed that will be at a slightly higher, slightly lower level. And you've got some challenge, so this is your negative. If you're suffering from these infectious diseases, you will have a level of challenge circulating around the flock. This is how the disease spreads all the time. This might go up and down according to the time of year, so if you've got a dry period such as we're in at the moment, the level of challenge might be quite low. At housing time this would increase, and indeed when you've got lots more lambs on the ground that would increase, so it sort of goes up and down a bit. But basically when you're dealing with an ongoing problem of lameness on a farm, your negatives always outweigh your positives, and so your sort of angle of the graph always means that you get disease. So your negatives never go lower than your positives, so you always end up with a grumbling level of disease. And as that challenge increases, something's out with your control, then you'll get higher levels of lameness, and at other times slightly lower levels, but you never completely get rid of the lameness. When you're using the 5-point plan, the aim of what you're trying to do here is you're trying to increase the resilience, so the natural resilience in your flock, and that's by culling, so that's removing the worst offenders. So you're giving yourself a boost on that positive box. We're using vaccination as a second building block on the positive side to try and give yourself another positive area, and we're squashing down this challenge box by using those 3 areas in the middle: quarantine, treatment and avoiding, to reduce the negatives. So what you're doing is building the positives, reducing the negatives, and you're tipping the angle of the graph in favour of no disease. The other thing that you're trying to do is give yourself as much margin of safety, so that's this white space here, as possible, so that if the challenge increases, so you get a wet year or housing time, so that if this increases, even if this increases substantially, you've still got a gap between your negatives and your positives, and you still don't get the disease. And that's really the aim of the programme. So in summary, just to look at where we are individually at FAI with our own flock, we started, before we started using the 5-point plan, with an average level of about 18% lameness per year. We implemented the 5-point plan, we managed to build on the positives, reduce the negatives, and in the first year we were able to reduce lameness to less than 2%. And then for the last 3 years we've been less than 1%. And I think that by using this programme, you need to be good enough for each of these 3 areas, but you don't need to be perfect. So it's a practical plan that's achievable for everybody. And if you are able to implement these 3 areas to the extent you need to, you will be able to reduce the angle of this graph, achieve this margin of error, and get down to these really low levels of lameness.